All right, so peep this. I went to edit something out of the previous live that I just wrapped, and in doing so, I went to edit something out of the previous live that we just wrapped because I didn't think it would be suitable for advertising. I do this, and I end up trimming out most of the video. Technology baffles me. In any event, here we are again. We covered most of the subjects. You guys already know by now. You guys probably already know how I feel about most of what's going on out there. The Casemiro Donaire stuff. We just had a very lengthy discussion about that. The Reggie belts. I'm still, I'm still kind of stuck on that, which is why I want to open a discussion up to other people that don't otherwise join the panel as often as some others do. Once again, for those that are wondering why I went live again, technical difficulties. I went to edit something out of the previous live that I just wrapped, and in doing so, I inadvertently ended up deleting most of the live, not realizing that I was trying to just edit out a single part, a small part, because I didn't think that would be suitable for advertising. So I'm old, technology baffles me. But once again, just to reiterate, because I don't think that I really got to drive the point home in the previous live. In a nutshell, I don't actually think it's a bad thing that the PBC chooses to isolate themselves from the rest of the world of boxing, because if you think about it, the less belts those fighters are fighting for, the better. If they end up with one of those belts and they end up going to that side of the street, we know that there's a good chance that they won't be unified with belts that might be on some other side of the street. If a WBC title ends up over there, a WBA title, or whatever kind of title, if they end up over there, well, they might not unify it with, say, an MJ Akhmadaliev or a Dimitri Bivol or just some other fighter that's with some other outfit. That's why I don't actually, I was Goody Kent. I don't actually think it's a bad thing anymore or as much as I did before that they isolate themselves from everyone else. And for the most part, a lot of the debates and a lot of the arguments that people end up having in reference to that practice, it has more to do with fans that want guys like me and you to give them credit that we give to other fighters, when the reason we give those other fighters credit is because they don't practice what the PBC practices. You want me to view these fighters in a lens that I view other fighters in, even though these fighters are not doing what those fighters are doing. In a nutshell, those are all arguments that no one needs to have. I don't need to have them. You don't need to have them. If those individuals are enamored with those fighters and they're content with the product that they're purchasing, there's no need to have a discussion about it. Enjoy your product. Because since when do WBA Reggie belts count? What I think is baffling is that they collect sanctioning fees for every one of those belts. So if David Morrell has a WBA baby belt at super middleweight, somebody's paying for that. If just any fighter anywhere in any division has a lesser version of a title, that is a lesser version of a title that they're actually paying for. And I'm just wondering, why do these fighters continue to skim out portions of their purse to hold on to these lesser titles when the boxing community at large knows that that's not the full version of the title and they don't consider you a champion? So what are you actually paying for? Because those sanctioning fees are actually the lifeblood of those sanctioning bodies. So if you really want to nip it in the bud and solve the problem, that's where it begins. Guys got to stop paying for them WBA interpersonal belts, WBA interstellar belts, intercontinental, international, interim, etc., etc. I agree, Danny. I mean, that's the question. What's the benefit of paying for gummy titles? They believe, at least the networks believe, that a fight is made better if you bill it as a title fight. That's what they believe. But the fans aren't dumb, and they know that, for example, in the super middleweight division, the full WBA champion is Canelo Alvarez with the WBA. Everyone knows that. No one is looking at Morrell and Canelo through the same lens. So why should Morrell's people, his management, his team, why should they even bother paying sanctioning fees for that baby belt when nobody really looks at you as a champion anyway? If you want to nip it in the bud, if you want to solve the problem, that's how you solve the problem. People need to stop paying for that stuff, because as long as fighters are giving percentages, even small percentages of their purses to these sanctioning bodies, it's just going to go on. It's just going to continue. They'll put as many belts out as they want because they know they're going to get a sanctioning fee for each one of those belts. Belts are just a way to buy your way into the rankings. I don't think, well, that's not necessarily true. I heard it said, I forgot where, that at least with the PBC, those networks want a certain number of championship fights. That apparently that's supposed to be a key point to whatever it is they have going on, that they want a certain number of championship fights, even though they don't have all the championship titles and they don't have all the champions. So in that situation, when you don't want to put your fighters in there with certain other fighters, the best thing you can do is fight for a Reggie title, a Reggie belt. Will it get to a point to where the PBC have no choice but to work with other promoters? Anything's possible, but it's more like, if they could find a way to be an island and make money on their own, which is sort of what they're doing or trying to do, they're not going to feel that pressure to make fights with other fighters. I mean, unless it starts to show up in the numbers, unless it starts to show up in the gate receipts or the TV ratings or the pay-per-view buys, if it's not showing up there, then they won't feel the pressure. Because that's when it's affecting your paper, that's when you're going to do something about it. So if they're happy making whatever money it is they are making, then they won't feel any pressure to make fights with any other fighters. My advice to anybody is to not get into arguments with these people on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. There's no need to get into an argument. If you consider a regular champion, right? If you qualify that shit, or if you come across somebody that qualifies that shit, go ahead. The rest of the world doesn't. That's just the truth. The rest of the world doesn't qualify Reggie belts. They never have. They're not about to. I know I wasn't the only one who saw the referee put something in his pocket from off the canvas. I don't know, Hot Mike. You might have been. I didn't see that. But it's not, none of it is very complex. None of it is very, unless it shows up in the numbers, they'll continue their practices, because they're not actually going for the big fights or the big purses, which kind of brings me back to what I usually tell you guys, that when I see Jamal mentioning Canelo, or I see, when I see certain fighters mentioning Canelo that are over there, I always wonder if they really want that fight, because I get the impression that they don't want that fight. Canelo's the A side. If Canelo says you have to come to the zone to have the fight, are you going to come to the zone to have the fight? If the biggest fight is with a fighter that's over there at Top Rank, are they going to make it? The biggest fight for Casemiro, for example, was the fight with Naoya Inoue. That's the biggest fight for him. That fight fell apart when COVID hit. He pops up on the PBC side of things, right? And ever since he ends up over there, we don't see an effort. We didn't see an effort in that year. We didn't see an effort to try to start the fight up again. What we saw is that he's mentioning Inoue, but he keeps looking for alternatives. Duke Micah, Guillermo Rigondeaux, and Rigondeaux became Nonito Donaire. You know what I mean? That you still mentioning him because he is the biggest name in your division, but you're not actually fighting him. You're not going to fight him. You keep talking about him while you about to fight other people. You was talking about him before and after the Duke Micah fight. You were talking about him in the buildup of the Rigo fight, which then became the Nonito Donaire fight. And he was still talking about the dude, saying, yeah, I'll do anything to beat Donaire so that I can get the Inoue. It doesn't look like you're trying to get the Inoue, though. So whenever the biggest fight for a fighter is on some other side of the street, I always wonder, are they actually going to go for it? Are they actually going to go for those fights with those fighters? Doesn't look like it. What's your thought on Shields not getting a PBC contract and why it didn't happen? I wondered about that because I think she could do very well on that side of the street. I honestly do believe she could do very well for herself if they decided to pair up. But for whatever reason, Al Heyman has an aversion to female fighters. I've no doubts it's because it is a tough sell in America. it would take work. It would take ideas, fresh ideas, ingenue, in order to develop a following for a female fighter here in America, and they don't want to have to do that. They don't, in a nutshell, they don't want to have to do that. I think that she would be good over there. I think she could do very well on Fox. It's just that those guys are relying on gimmicks and this and that. They don't necessarily have any new ideas, and it would take new ideas to carve out that lane for female fighters in America. They're not creative like that. They're not even smart like that. You know what I mean? If you're smart, you're gonna move a certain way. Like I thought there was a period where I thought that maybe she might end up over there, but after a while, based on the ratings that were coming out from Showtime for her fights, I could see that Al Heyman's not going to pick her up. I think David Benavidez may be on the brink of, I don't, that wouldn't surprise me. If there are no belts over there for him to fight for, and the Charlo fight isn't about to happen, and Plant is in the middle of that situation with Canelo, and who knows if we're even going to get that fight, because I don't know that we are, I don't know that we're not. It wouldn't surprise me if we don't. If they say to Canelo that the only way he gets Plant is to enter into a multi-fight deal with the PBC, I'm curious, what's Canelo going to do? Does he decide to get into business with them? Or does he walk away and do something else because he doesn't want to be committed to a network? He doesn't want to be committed to nobody telling him what to do and who to fight. That's why he got away from Golden Boy, because Golden Boy gave DAZN power to accept or reject his opponents. That wasn't what his contract was based on. His contract with Golden Boy did not match Golden Boy's contract with DAZN. His contract with Golden Boy allowed him to have the right to choose who he's going to fight. But when Golden Boy climbed into bed with DAZN, they gave DAZN that privilege. And that's why, since those two things were in conflict, they had to let him go. Because you breached the contract that you struck with him. You can't give them the power to choose his opponents, accept them or reject them, when you already gave him that power. So your agreement is in conflict. You got to let him go. And that's what they did. That's what they did. And that's what I told you they were going to do. That he's not going to get the monetary value of what he would have made had the contract been completed with DAZN. He's not going to get those millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in a settlement. But what he can do, what he can get, is released from his contract with Golden Boy. And that's what I thought he was after. That, like, this isn't, maybe it's about the money, maybe it's not. But at minimum, what can happen is they can release him. They can release him from his contract with Golden Boy, and he's a big enough name that he can do his own thing on his own terms, and he doesn't need Golden Boy to promote it. Networks want belts for legit promoters, pay Alphabet's promoters, take money from fighters, all the blood and tears of fairly young men. Yeah, I mean, that's the story of everything. Old men create wars and young men fight in them. That's the story of everything. I'll say that they think that they can fool the consumer by picking up these lesser titles and regular titles. They believe that they can fool the consumer. I mean, yes, it's a way to move up the ranks. It's not that it isn't. It is a way to move up the ranks, but they do so in order to try to fool the consumer into thinking that this is a title fight when it's not a title fight, because we know who the world titleists are, the full ones. So you have fighters that are paying sanctioning fees for baby belts, and they're frittering their money away because nobody looks at Morrell, for example, as the WBA champion at 168. They know that's Canelo. They don't even look at them as being in the same, but you're still paying sanctioning fees for that title. You still are. You're still paying out of pocket. A percentage of your purse goes to the sanctioning fees for that belt. So, like I said, the real way to nip it in the bud is the fighters. They got to stop paying for them. Like, I don't know why Dillian White's still paying sanctioning fees to be WBC interim champion. They're not going to order that fight. No matter what happens, they're not going to order that fight. They will move heaven and earth so that they don't have to order that fight. So why are you still paying them? I don't know. I don't know. I've been saying that for 2 years, that Dillian White must really believe that he can beat Wilder because he's frittering all this money away, paying the WBC sanctioning fees for a fight that they're never going to order. They're never going to order that fight. Look, he beat Povetkin, right? He got interim status back. Now you tell me, when is the deadline for the WBC champion, whoever it is? When is the deadline for the WBC champion to satisfy him as a mandatory challenger? When is it? It's been over a year since Wilder versus Fury 2. You don't see the WBC talking about what winner of this fight has to fight Dillian White. They're not saying nothing like that. So it's like you paying them for what? They're not going to order that fight. I mean, they don't need to fool all the consumers. Exactly. That's, you hit the nail on the head, Ray. That it's not their goal to fool everybody. They know that they can't. But if they can fool enough people that they'll get some viewership and sell some tickets and make a little bit of money, that's enough for them. They know they can't fool everybody. Why would he fight Rigo though? I'm not saying that I'm not against it. If he announced tomorrow that he was going to fight Rigo, yeah, I'll watch it, but I don't see why he would fight Rigo. To do what? Rigo is the WBA. Rigo holds the lesser version of Inouye's title. He has the Reggie version of Inouye's title. And you don't, like, what is your team doing? And what pressure are they applying to the WBA to order that fight? Aside from saying shit about this dude, your team is not doing nothing to make that fight. You was about to fight Casemiro, not Inoue, but you got a WBA Reggie belt. Donaire wife is killing it for her guy. I agree with that shit. That's a beautiful thing they got going on. I agree, Mickey, that's I don't know why he's spending all that money on them sanctioning fees. Like, it doesn't make sense. You know they're not gonna order that fight. Dillian White himself said that he felt that the WBC was protecting Wilder 2 years ago. But if you feel that way, why are you paying them? They're not going to order that fight between you and him or you and Fury. They're not going to let you get in the way of what they got going on. They gave Fury priority over you. So why are you paying them? Does Wilder retire if he loses or become a gatekeeper? I believe if he loses, I do think that maybe he retires. Can you see him sticking, like, all right, imagine that he loses, right? That would be a big deal if he loses the third fight, if he loses again, if he loses in worse fashion. So you have to ask yourself, why would he stick around? He's in his mid-30s. He's got close to 50 fights. He's had several surgeries to the same arm. It's just, you look at all that stuff and it's kind of like, nah, I really don't think he'd stick around. To make money with who? He can't get the Joshua fight if he gets ass beat, if he don't got no belt. Like, they saying this and that, but real shit. If he don't have a belt, he's kind of out of the picture. Like, nobody needs you, bro. You're not going to stick around and fight the Hergovics of the world. You're not going to stick around and fight all these other guys that are coming through, the Joyces, the Yokas, the Dubois, all these guys coming out of the, Eastern Europe. You're not going to fight none of them. The biggest fight you could probably be in, outside of what you're already doing, is an Andy Ruiz fight. But if you lose, does he have that fight? I get the sense that if he were to lose that fight, yeah, maybe he retires. Maybe. He made a lot of money with Fury. I think he might, D. I think he might. I'm talking about Gennady Golovkin after the Murata fight. He might. He's pushing 40. Stick around to fight who? I mean, there's an off chance that maybe he would go to 168, maybe pursue a Canelo Alvarez fight. There is a chance. So it's not set in stone that he would retire. It's not like there's still other money out there for him, other money to be made. But he's gonna make, if he fights Murata New Year's Eve in Japan, that's a big payday. And big enough that, yeah, he could retire. He made all that money with Canelo in those 2 fights. He made himself some good money with Jacobs. He made himself some good money with Lemieux. Had 2 fights with Canelo, very lucrative fights. Both of those pay-per-views sold 1 million pay-per-view buys. He, he got 14 million for Steve Rolls, another 14 million for Sergey Didivianchenko. He got something like 7, reportedly. This is all reportedly, based on the numbers that are out there. He supposedly got $7 million for Zeramata. That dude is not strapped for cash. He doesn't need to, like, he could retire right now and he'd probably be set for life, so. Donaire versus Casemiro may be off due to Casemiro. Yeah, I know. We talked about that. For those that are not aware, the reason that I ended up going live again is because I was editing the video. I was editing the live stream that we just did, and I inadvertently deleted most of it. I didn't realize. I was trying to trim out a certain part, and I ended up trimming most of the goddamn video. Doesn't he still have 3 fights left on his contract? Oh, yeah, but he can always choose not to fight. The way that breaks down is he's got 3 fights left on his DAZN contract, right? The only way he can get out of that commitment is if he retires. But so long as he's active and so long as he's fighting, he owes them 3 fights. He doesn't owe anybody anything if he retires. So there is a way out of that. If he decides, yeah, I'm retired, bro, I'm not going to fight no more, then he doesn't fight no more, and that's it. They can't force him to fight. They can only force him to, if he is fighting, fight on their network or, breach a contract, lawsuit, litigation, all that shit. What's the situation with it? Well, the trilogy is set for October. That's what they're saying. For those that are not aware, Estrada's not the WBC world champion anymore. He's a franchise champion now. Sor Rungvisai has the WBC world title because Sor was the WBC mandatory. I'll add that he shouldn't have been the WBC mandatory because the fights that he had leading up to this point have not even been in the super flyweight division. Make of that what you will. But for whatever reason, the WBC made him the mandatory to the WBC title. I was goody Shadow, was goody D, Jared. But it's supposed to go down in the fall, and the only real title that's going to be on the line is the WBA title that Juan won from Chocolatito. That's the only real title that's going to be on the line. He's franchise. I don't know if Chocolatito beats Juan, does he become franchise champion after that? I don't know. So we'll see what happens with that. It's still a great fight. It's still a really good fight. I just don't know what happens. Like, are they going to do what they did with Teofimo and Loma? If Chocolatito were to win, does he become franchise? I don't know. Bro, screw these franchise trash title. Yeah, IBF and WBO are the straight shooters right now, which is saying a lot because the WBO used to be the WBO used to get a lot of criticism for stuff that they did. And now in 2021, the WBO is actually a more well-run sanctioning body than both the WBA and the WBC. Before, most of the criticism used to go to them. Now it's the other way around. What do you think of some channels saying PBC is putting on better fight cards than DAZN or ESPN? I think that's bullshit. Juan Montiel is better than Charlo versus Montiel is better than what fight? Taylor versus Ramirez? Canelo versus Saunders. You have Canelo versus Saunders on DAZN. That was the last super middleweight title fight they put on. PBC is putting on David Benavidez versus Jose Uzcategui. Which one is better? Canelo versus Saunders, Benavidez versus Uzcategui. It's silly, man. It's silly. It's silly. I was gonna watch that. Yeah, bro. Like I messed up. I messed up. I was gonna edit something out of there because I didn't think it was suitable for advertising. And when I did the thing to where you bring the things together and try to edit something out, I ended up deleting the damn thing. Deleting most of the video, that is. Franchise wasn't a belt till T.O. won. Now he has 2 WBC belts and he still ain't. Yeah, I mean, it's not hard to understand. Like, at the end of the day, most of the guys that are saying that he's undisputed, the fans like me and you, those are his fans. They're going to say that. The reality of it is, Loma didn't have the WBC world title when he fought Teofimo, so you couldn't have won it from him. What you had was a franchise title. That's what you had. Now all of a sudden, look, what people are doing with Davis right now, with Reggie belts, that's what Tio's fans was doing with the franchise. Oh, now it counts? Now you qualify it? Did you qualify it when Canelo had it? Or the fact PBC has a pay-per-view for every decent fight. Meanwhile, we get better. Yeah, like it's look. Navarrete versus Diaz is better than 95% of PBC fights. Literally, that fight was better than 90. Like, what fight was better than that? What fight? What fight that they put on was better than that? It was a trophy designation. Exactly, Marcel. It was a trophy designation. Um, Everybody acts like they're doing something different. Teofimo's fans act like they're different from Gervonta Davis's fans. They're not. You're not. All of a sudden, franchise counts because Teofimo has it. The same way that all of a sudden, WBA Reggie belts count because Davis has them. They're doing the same thing. They're all doing the same shit. Doing the same shit. They're criticizing each other for playing the same game. I don't qualify franchise and I don't qualify Reggie belts. Those are not traditional world titles. You made up that franchise shit, what, 2 years ago? And Canelo still chose to fight for a world title. Remember, they made the franchise for Canelo. They made that for him, right? Fast forward 2 years, and he's still fighting for world titles. He wasn't satisfied with no franchise belt. When he decided, I want to be undisputed, when he decided, that's what I want to do, I want to be the 168-pound undisputed champion, he went after the world title. Even though he's franchised, he still went after the world title because you need world titles to be undisputed. It's not complex. The only people that want it to be complex are fanboys. And it's all BS. It's resume that makes you. I mean, people pick and choose too much in boxing. That's why boxing is an oddball in the sporting world. MLB, NHL, NFL, NBA, those sports aren't like boxing. They're not. You don't see none of the dumb shit that you see in boxing in those sports. The stats are the stats. The stats are the gospel. You go by the stats. You go by the history. You go by the track record. Boxing has a rich lineage that boxing fans want to ignore. This is the only sport that's like this. No other sport is like this. That's the reality of that shit. Post a link for the people. No other sport is like that. When I was like, and I've said this many times, when I was on my MLB and my NHL shit, I never had none of the arguments about those sports that you see in boxing. In boxing, you literally have people that if becoming an undisputed champion is like the playoffs or the World Series or the Super Bowl, right? If that's the parallel for that's the parallel, that's the show, that's probably the biggest thing you could do, as far as legacy and accolades. If that's one of the biggest things or the biggest thing that you could do, this is the only sport where they shit on it. I heard it was room Versailles Quadras for the vacant belt. I don't know about it being vacant. I believe they gave it to Room Visai. Let me check, but I'm pretty sure they gave it to Room Visai. I'll check right now. Check right now, and we will see. See who they have as WBC champion at Superfly. I'm pretty sure it's Room Visai. Oh, this is peculiar. They have Juan Francisco Estrada as the WBC champion by way of the IBF. That's peculiar. Let me see if they have it the same way at lightweight. Nope. See, this is weird, man. Okay, at Superfly, even though Juan is franchise, they have him as the WBC champion. But if I go to lightweight, this is what they have. Hold on, let me straighten this out for y'all. Okay, you see that? At lightweight, they have Devin Haney as WBC champion because Teofimo is franchise. But if I go down to Superfly, this is what they have. Even though Juan is franchise. Juan don't got the world title. Juan is franchise. I don't know. I would say comparatively Indongo. I would say. Rosario as a champion, his reign as a champion lasted 2 seconds. And so did Indongo's. Indongo didn't reign as a champion long, but I think he reigned a little longer than Rosario, I think. Rosario lost the belts that he won in his very next fight, whereas Indongo won the IBF from Trianovsky, then he went to Glasgow, won the WBO from did he have the WBO or was it the WBA? I forget, but he won the belt from Ricky Burns, and we know the rest. Franchise means sponsorship of one. Yeah, that's what that means, Marcel. That's exactly what that means. They're blatantly and brazenly corrupt. We know that. How does a non-profit organization categorize its titles, a title that they have, as a franchise title? Well, I thought you were a non-profit. With Donaire spraying rat attack on his... Yo, y'all cats is wild, man. I think Beats had it spot on. Ellerby's comments about Taylor not bringing nothing to the table for a tank fight shows you how far American... Yeah, man. Yeah, man, they're scared to fight. It's a bad look. It's a bad look in the eyes of the world. Like, who are you expecting to get behind these guys? I'm trying to remember. I believe that those gate receipts that came to a grand total of $2 million were for the Santa Cruz fight. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's where that's from. And it's like they're happy just making that little bit of money. You know, they're happy making that little bit of money. They're happy selling a little bit of tickets, selling a little bit of pay-per-views. The big fights that would get you big money and big pay-per-views, those are the ones they don't want to make. The big, like Teofimo Lopez versus Gervonta Davis. That's a big fight. But they'll tell you, oh, Lopez doesn't sell. Lopez doesn't bring nothing to the table. But Mario Barrios does? The guys that he's been fighting, Cuellar, Nunez, Ruiz, Fonseca, Barrios. Which one of those guys is a big name? So you can't. So it's all of it is common sense. If you willing to give those guys who no one knows opportunities, you know damn good and well that, okay, Josh Taylor's got a bigger name than any of those guys. If you cool to fight them, why you not cool to fight him? Teofimo is probably not a household name, not yet, but I wager more people know Teofimo than they know the people that you've been fighting. What you trying to convince me of? That more people know Mario Barrios than Teofimo? Who's Tank gonna fight next? Then probably Rolly Romero at 135 pounds. He has a Reggie belt, or Isaac Cruz. Like you don't have to look hard to see who he's gonna fight because whoever it is gonna be an in-house fighter. So all you got to do is look in their house. They're not targeting boxing fans or boxing culture. You hit the nail on the head, Marcel. They're not targeting boxing fans. They targeting World Star and Vlad TV and Love and Hip Hop fans. And they happy with that. If they can make a little bit of money with that, they happy with that. They don't want to gamble. They know that there's a small group of people that fuck with their guy. So as long as they got that little group of people and they can make a little bit of money, that's what they're going to stick with. It's not like, once again, the biggest fights in boxing, the biggest ones, all of them is legacy fights. Leonard Hagler, Leonard Hearns, Felix Trinidad, Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather Jr. versus Manny Pacquiao. Those wasn't cash grabs. That wasn't Mayweather versus McGregor. That's a cash grab. Mayweather versus Logan Paul. That's a cash grab. The biggest fights in boxing that made the most money, all of them were legacy fights. All of them. They not fighting for legacy. Hey, that's cool. That's your business. That's your business. That's your prerogative. I'm just saying that narrative that they're doing what's best for business, no, you're not. You're just playing it safe. You're not actually doing what's best for business because you can only go so high with what you're doing. You're going to hit 1 million pay-per-view buys with Mario Barrios? How is Al Heyman making money with no heavyweight belt? Advertising revenue? You make it's a valid question, Bogey. It's a valid question. Honestly, that's a valid question. How do you make money off these guys when you isolate them from everybody else and they don't even have titles? None of them have big followings. None of them have very many fans. So how are you making money off these fighters? Subriel Matias would be the best option in terms of competitive in-house matchup for Tank, but with Ellerby and Floyd's matchmaking track record, they will probably go with Rolly. And they said that Leonard Ellerby said that he's not going to campaign at 140. He said that before the fight, that he's not going to stay there, basically. Floyd said something to where maybe he'll end up moving back up at some point. But I guess what they letting us know is that in the immediate future, he's not going to stay there. He's probably going to go back to 35 and 30. Well, really 35, because I don't really know if he could keep making 30. JB, I agree with you because that's kind of what I'm waiting for. I would like to think that the fight happens in September, but what if where are we with the fight? Yeah, that's who I mentioned on Boxing Learner, either Isaac Cruz or Rolly Romero. It's now and then we're gonna act like either Isaac Cruz or Rolly Romero. They're gonna act, I should say, as if Isaac Cruz or Rolly Romero is a better fight than Teofimo Lopez. It's just gonna repeat itself. I was good, LeBron. To become a household name, yeah, of course, because you're not fooling anybody. They look at the number of followers. Look, here's an example. They look at these metrics. He's got about 2.9 million followers, right? 2.9 million. They look at those metrics and tell themselves that he has this huge following, right? Gennady, his followers on Instagram are comparable to Gennady Golovkin's. Gennady Golovkin has 4 million followers. Tank Davis has 2.9 million followers. And if you go off of metrics like that, it seems like they're in the same place, but they're not. Gennady Golovkin got $14 million to fight Steve Rolls. He got $14 million to fight Sergey. He was involved in 2 pay-per-views, 2 of the biggest pay-per-views of the last 5 years. So all that smoke and mirrors that they doing, all that shit, it ain't about nothing. You can't be making that much bread off him because the fights just ain't that interesting. Going up and down in weight is no good for Tank. Yeah, but that's why they're going to match him soft. It's not like he's going up and down in weight and fighting the best fighters. He's going up and down in weight and fighting the Fonsecas and Ruizes of the world. So he could probably keep going up and down in weight so long as they match him soft. By the follower Ryan Logic, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll say this much. He got money. He do have money. He has more money than the average fighter in the same place in their career that he is. Like, if you a contender, you were up and coming, you're not even really a champion yet. You a contender. Ryan likely is in a better place than most other contenders in that same position financially. He probably is. He has a Gatorade sponsorship. How many fighters have Gatorade sponsorships and they're not even champions yet? So he probably has some money. Rolly already got a fight lined up. I think Javante, I mean, he might. If he do, I ain't going to buy it. I ain't bought the last 2 fights. Probably will. And even if our pay-per-view is 1/3 the price of America's, I'd bet a Tank Taylor. Oh, yeah, of course. Listen, man. There's certain stuff that goes without saying. Taylor versus Davis, and we all know it won't happen. But if you were to make that fight, yes, that fight would do considerably better business than Taylor versus Barrios. Like, honestly, like what the arguments that people are having on Twitter, they're stupid. You shouldn't have them. I try not to have them because it's stupid. If you're trying to convince the world that Barrios gets you more money than Taylor, you're an idiot. You are. You're an idiot. Honestly. The Brits will fly out for that fight. You think they won't? Those Scotsmen, they'll come out for that fight. Of course they would. There'll be more viewership for that fight here in America because Tank will finally be fighting somebody that's credible. So even people that don't like Tank will look at the fight so that they can see Taylor. For example, they didn't get my money for Mario Barrios and Tank. They didn't get my money. If it were Tank and Taylor, okay, now you'll get my money. Now you'll get it. Which is what I said in a previous video. If it's Tank versus Lopez, I'll buy that. But I'm not going to buy Tank versus Barrios or Tank versus Santa Cruz. No, I ain't going to buy none of that shit. You crazy. I'm not buying that shit. Hey, what's goody, Jed? Tank will not fight at 135 unless a Reggie belt is up for grabs because he's staying away from the belt holders, Haney and Tio. Well, maybe he fights Rolly towards the end of the year. Somebody said that Rolly has a fight date. When is that fight date? And based on that date, does it allow for him to fight again this year? Like, is the fight date in July? Because if the fight date is in July, towards the end of July, he could always fight Davis in the fall or the winter. Change of subject a bit, but I think a lot of people are overlooking Usyk and expecting an AJ win. I personally think it's going to be a tough fight. I give AJ 65%. Look, the main thing with Usyk is how he's looked so far. That's what people base those opinions on. He didn't look spectacular with Chaz Witherspoon. He didn't look spectacular with Chisora. He didn't. He didn't look spectacular in any of those fights. That doesn't mean he didn't do something amazing at cruiserweight, so I don't want people to take it that way. He did do something amazing at cruiserweight, but I haven't seen anything amazing from him in a long time. That's all I'm saying. And that's why people feel that way, because they've been watching him and they not seeing the wow factor that they were seeing at cruiserweight. They're just not seeing it at heavyweight. Taylor isn't known in the UK. He was talked about briefly after the Prograis fight because it was a Scot. I'm talking about boxing fans. I'm talking about boxing fans that follow boxing in the UK. And even that is a pocket of people. But I'm telling you, I'd wager that that pocket of fans, they'll travel. They'll travel because they've traveled for less. Julius, you are supporting ancestral motherland Spain in Euros. They lit up the tourney. I don't really support Spain. I don't have nothing against them. I don't support them. I agree, Shadow. He just doesn't look very effective there. That's all I'm saying. He doesn't look very effective there. Agit Caballel actually looked like he was more in control of Derek Chisora than Usyk did. And that fight is available on DAZN if you haven't seen it. Agit Caballel, he just didn't look, how could I put it? He didn't look as vulnerable against Derek as Usyk did, because Usyk looked vulnerable. Like, you know what? If Usyk gets through with a punch, he might could knock this guy down. What are the odds of Deontay Wilder winning on... Man, listen, that whole shit might be scripted if he wins that way. If Wilder wins on points, you got to think about it this way. That's probably the least likely outcome to the bookies, that Wilder wins on points. So they'd make a lot of money if he wins on points. That's all I'm saying. The bookies, the casinos, they clean up if Wilder were to win on points. Agreed, Lennox. Agreed. I mean, I think the odds are slim to nil. I think the odds of that are slim to nil. The odds. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. That just means that that's how the bookies might price that particular outcome. And I think it's interesting that the casinos would make a lot of money if he won on points. They'd make a lot of money. They'd clean up if he won on points. Hey, what's going on, Jed?
What's going on, bro? How are you?
Chilling. I'm talking about this Taylor versus and once again, it's not that Taylor is a household name, because I saw somebody say that. I know he's not a household name over there, but what I also know is 2 million, over 1 million American fight fans, right? They tuned in to see that fight with him and Jose Ramirez. What that tells me is that the boxing fans know who he is. The boxing fans, and it's not a lot of us, but the boxing fans know him. So I'd wager Taylor versus Davis makes more money and gets more attention than Taylor versus Barrios. So the business of boxing argument doesn't even come into it. You're not going to convince, nobody's going to convince me that Taylor versus Barrios is not a better fight than Tank versus I'm fucked up.
Tank versus Taylor.
Taylor versus Davis makes more money than Davis versus Barrios. That's a given. That fight makes more money.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I never heard of Barrios. Didn't know who he was before. Well, I knew who he was, but I mean, I hadn't really followed him. I didn't really know of him as being a big deal in boxing, until this Tank fight. And then it seemed when he got signed as a Tank opponent, he became like the new Eric Morales or something. Everyone started talking him up about how dangerous he was and this and that, when he was really just a paper belt holder at 140. That's all he was. He was just talked up as a Tank opponent, in my opinion. And this was just a hype up Tank's victory.
We can look at Wilder versus Ortiz in the lens of Davis versus Barrios in the sense that Ortiz was a solid opponent for Wilder at the time. I think we can all admit that was probably the most solid guy that he had fought up until that point, right? Good opponent. He doesn't have the greatest resume, Ortiz. He doesn't. Povetkin's resume is head and shoulders above Ortiz's, right? But he was a solid guy at the time. And I looked at Barrios in that same lens that, you know what? It's not a bad fight. It shouldn't be a pay-per-view. And Barrios really isn't proven at 140, but it's a decent fight. And the same thing they did with Ortiz is the same thing they're doing with Barrios. Oh, all of a sudden, he's this amazing fucking fighter. He's just the greatest thing the 140-pound division's ever seen, so that Davis could be special for beating him. It's the same shit.
Exactly right. And to be honest with you, I think Ortiz is a better victory than Barrios, because Ortiz had destroyed Jennings. He did have a little bit of a hype about being a boogeyman. I know that was kind of manufactured, but whatever. I think Ortiz was more of a proven ground fight for Wilder than Tank Barrios. Just in my opinion, I'm not that impressed with it at all. I'd be more impressed if Tank did that to one of the top 35-pounders like Lopez or even Ryan Garcia or Lomachenko. Then this Barrios win, just to me, is not really that impressive, a bigger statement. I expected that to happen, and that's what he did. Like you said, it's a decent, good win, but it's nothing special.
I agree that I looked at the fight as, okay, well, the most you could get out of the fight is looking at it as a litmus test. A litmus test that let's see if Tank's power carries, and let's see how he handles himself. This is not the kind of fight you could read that much into. It really isn't. But it is a decent fight. And I do agree with you that if we are going to compare Ortiz to Barrios, Ortiz was a little bit more proven. Actually, that because of the Jennings win. So I do agree with that. But it's the same practice. They're doing that. All of a sudden, beating Ortiz makes you the greatest heavyweight the world has ever seen. And they're doing that with Barrios. Beating Barrios, that's more of a statement than unifying the division and fighting all the champions in the division. Beating Barrios is better than that. That's how they're treating it. Tone, how do you feel about it, Tone?
This is what I got to say first and foremost. Who the fuck is Mario Barrios?
A dude that got a gift.
No. I know. Hold on. Let me finish. Who the fuck knew who the fuck he was before Tank was fighting him? Nobody. Anybody who ever seen him fight, the first fight they may have seen by him was Akhmedov. And people argue that Akhmedov should have beat him. Secondly, he's not a real fucking champion. And the reason why I say this is we have a undisputed champion in 140, and that's Josh Taylor. Now, to move further past that, Mario Barrios is a blown up 122-pound fighter. A lot of people don't even understand that he started at 122. So I look at it as like, this is just another 122-pound fighter that Tank is knocking out. He has a tendency to keep fighting these 122-pound fighters. And that's what he did. People got caught up on the height. Height doesn't make you big. Weight does. Tank has never made weight in any weight fucking class. So he's way bigger than Barrios, who was making 122. So moving past that, nobody knows who Josh Taylor is, but they knew who Barrios was. That's a fucking joke. That is a fucking joke. Like you said, you put the numbers out there between Ramirez and Josh Taylor. But the fact of the matter is, Barrios had 0 people backing him. Josh Taylor has a whole fucking country.
Well, the other thing about it is like where I'm at with this argument and this discussion, because we're all in agreement, so there's no argument. I'm at the point where now it's about solutions, because at the end of the day, many of the points that we revisit, we all know this stuff and we know it's all bullshit. The solution to the shit is, look, you could love Gervonta Davis all fucking day. You could buy every single fight that he has. You could go to every single fucking fight that he has. It's your prerogative. Like, they could do what they want. If he's a star to these individuals, if he's a star to anybody, that's your prerogative. You could like him, you could love him, you could hate him, but don't expect me to do that. That's really where the issues are. That you go on Twitter and you say, well, Reggie belts is not real titles. They never was. And you're going to get 2, 3, 4, 5 guys trying to argue with you about the shit. Like, look, Reggie belts is not going to be legit just because you want him to be. Davis is not going to be pound for pound just because you want him to be. I'm sorry. He don't fit the bill. Now, you can like him and you can love him, and that's your prerogative, but don't expect me to like him and love him. That's my whole thing. Like, I don't really care if Ak and Barack from the Zone have him pound for pound. I don't give a shit because I don't follow your list. I don't, but it's the truth. You know, I'm like, you follow the channel, Tone. You know, I say that all the time. They're like,
let me ask you an honest question about Mario Barrios, okay? Do you think he could beat Regis Prograis?
No.
Do you think he could beat Ramirez?
I don't think he beats Postol.
I was getting to him.
I don't think he beats Postol.
This is my thing. Yes, he had a baby belt. Yes, he was a baby champion. But in all actuality, he could beat none of the top 5 140-pound fighters, whether you want to call them super lightweight, junior welterweights, whatever you want to call them. He couldn't beat any of the top 5 guys. So that, and the thing about it is yes, Tank knocked him out. But before Tank knocked him out, he struggled with him early. And if he's struggling with a Barrios, what the fuck do you think a Josh Taylor's going to do to him?
Of course.
Just tall, who's bigger?
Of course. Like, look. It's not even the hypothetical scenarios we have to go off of, because we have the facts. Barrios didn't get to the point to where he fought former champions. You see what I mean? Like, Regis fought Indongo, who was a former champion. Then he fought Kirill Rillick, who was a champion, WBA champion at the time. Taylor, he fought Victor Postol, who was a former WBC champion. Then he fought Ivan Baranchik, who was IBF champion. Then it's like everybody fought. So you know what the pecking order is, because everybody actually fought. Barrios didn't fight not near one of them guys. So he not in that conversation.
No, he fought Akhmedov, who only had 7 fucking fights for a vacated regular belt. Like,
to me, it's like I don't even gotta get into what Barrios beat Postol, because you didn't beat Postol. Other people beat Postol. You the one that didn't. So you not even, basically, to your point, you struggled with a Barrios who never even fought, let alone beat a Postol. So you struggling with him, tell me what I need to know. And we knew that before the fight. Bro, Taylor, watch this kid, man. It ain't even because Davis is bad. It's because you built like a tree stump.
Well, you know what it is? I don't even think it's that he's built like a tree stump. Here's my issue. I, for some reason, like Tank Davis. There's something about him that I like because I see a lot of potential. I've seen potential in him for a long time. But what irritates me, why I get so frustrated with talking about him, is I've watched this guy be moved so fucking carefully that he's never met his potential and he'll never meet his potential. And what I foresee happening is the same shit that happened to Daniel Dubois is going to happen to him. Eventually, they're going to put him in there with a live dog who's not going to lay down, who's actually a good fighter as well. And they're going to beat the fuck out of him because he's been moved so softly that he's not going to know what to do when he's in a real war.
I can't. You know why I can't see that happening, and I'm gonna let Jed chime in on this. I don't see that happening because they've matched him so soft for so long. What are the odds? He's like, he don't bump into fighters. You know, you bump into fighters when you're fighting the best fighters. You're gonna bump into somebody that's gonna give you a problem because you fighting who's out there. He's not fighting who's out there. So how is he gonna bump into a live one? How? Where?
Greer doesn't look like at 130. He didn't fight the Burchelts. I mean, that was a fight everyone. Burchelt, Lomachenko. He didn't fight them at 135. He hasn't. He hasn't again. And now here at 140, he's beat Barrios and he's crowning himself. And it looks like he doesn't want to fight, any of the fighters there. So it seems to be just the pattern of this guy's career, not fighting the best competition at any weight class.
Well, I don't think it's
really
him.
Unfortunate at the time, talented fighter.
I believe Tank will fight anybody they put in front of him. The issue is they don't put anybody in front of him. You have to put blame on Tank because at the end of the day, it's his career to control. But at the same time, I feel like it's not Tank ducking the top tier guys. It's Al Heyman, it's Floyd Mayweather Jr., Leonard Ellerby. They're the ones that don't set it up.
Why do I say it's Tank? Because Canelo Alvarez never had to fight Lara. His promoter didn't want him to fight Lara. They didn't want that for him. He wanted that for himself. Tank is not a little boy. He's 26, I think, going on 27. He's not a little boy. Like, he's not 22, 23 to where, you just so wet behind the ears and you don't know nothing. After a certain age, you're just a dummy after a certain age. A lot of fighters took control of their careers. A lot of different fighters did take control of their careers. So I don't give him that pass to where it's not you, it's your team. I still look at it like, nah, it's you because you let them do that to you. Ultimately, when fighters want to fight to get made, it has to get made because you're the one that generates the revenue. Leonard Ellerby don't generate the revenue. You know what I mean? Like, we ain't talking about shit that Leonard be doing and all of that. Like, nah, you ain't the fighter. Your moneymaker is Davis.
Well, that's why I said that you have to put some of the blame on him. But I'm saying that I don't feel like let's say, for example, right? They line him up to fight Teofimo Lopez. I don't think he would back out personally from that fight if they lined it up. That's all I'm saying. I don't think he has the fear of the other guys. It's just at the end of the day, he's going to do what his team tells him to do. So yes, you could give him the blame for not taking his career into his own hand. I agree. But at the same time, I don't think he's fearful of any of the guys. I just think he's going to be moved how he's moved, and he's satisfied with that.
And you know what? When that stuff with Lomachenko happened about 3 years ago, where Floyd was threatening him, why would Floyd threaten you with a Lomachenko fight? Because he knows you don't want that. Like it's like, yo, look, I want to try to give him a break, but there's no way for me to give him a break. There's no way. Like, when your own promoter, when he was mad at you, he threatened you with the name of another fighter. That kind of tells me everything I need to know.
I give you Loma. Like, he definitely dug Loma, like, without a doubt.
And it's like fight fans are emotional, and I get that. Maybe I'm not emotionally driven enough, I guess, because you beating Barrios don't do shit for me, dog. Like, yeah, you knocked him out, so what? Who the fuck was he?
But that's the thing, Julius. Like, people get so hung up on him knocking out Barrios. He was supposed to knock out Barrios. Barrios was there for him to knock out and look good. However, what I took away from it was Barrios is slow as shit. His hand speed is slow as shit. And he gave you fucking problems. That's a bad look, in my opinion. I don't care how you won the fight.
Signals going in and out. But I do agree. Barrios gave him problems. I said before the fight, Barrios is a tall kid with a jab who doesn't give up his height. And because he doesn't give up his height, there's going to be some difficulties because it's not going to be like Leo to where he's tall, but he's hunching forward, leaning over you and hooking off. It's going to be easier for you to touch him because he fights close to you. A kid with a good jab that'll keep a little distance between you and him, and he got some height. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But ultimately, who is he and what has he done that beating him should even matter? What has he done? Who is he beating? He hasn't even gotten to the point to where he's fighting the former champions of this division. So you kind of basically what he fought was a guy who was on the verge of contender status because he never fought a former champion. You know that before you become a contender, a world-class contender, usually you either fight a former world champion or someone who challenged for a world title. This is established. This is the way it's been for a long time, all right? Barrios hadn't done none of those things. He can't check off none of those boxes. So you could go in there and look amazing against him. Who is he? Who is he? The same hyperbole was exactly what happened with Wilder, and he stepped up and got stepped on. I mean, if they ever let him step up, Grant, because my point is that they've been matching him so soft for so long, they know what they're doing, and there's not much chance of him bumping into anybody the way they doing shit. Who's he gonna bump into when every opponent is carefully hand selected and they reading the ingredients and they're looking at the periodic table of contents? He's not gonna bump into shit. For 4 years, they've been saying Tank isn't ready. Yeah, for 4 years, they've been saying Tank isn't ready for Loma. Floyd giving him tips in his last fight and saying they're staying indoors is telling. The training wheels is, like, it's like a guy who's fighting who's out there is going to lose before a guy like Tank because this guy's fighting who's out there. It's more out there that can happen. But when every move is so careful, they got to find these guys. Who was talking about Mario Barrios before Tank decided to fight him? He wasn't on nobody's radar. I've always believed Wilder when he said his legs were gone in that fight, but it wasn't the suit. It was the nervous energy from being in his first really big fight. That's a fair point. That's one way to look at that. I don't know. Like Eliezer, I don't know, bro, because who is he fighting? Who is he beating? That you got to have all these different things. They're putting him in there with guys that don't have certain shit. That's what they do. They're putting them in there with guys that don't have certain shit, not guys that do have certain shit. So as long as he keep dealing with them kind of people and them kind of opponents, he ain't gonna bump into shit. I think the real question is how long is it gonna take before people get sick and tired of it and stop buying into it? That there are other fighters that are out there, and aren't they gonna notice that he is not fighting none of those fighters? He's not fighting Devin Haney. He's not fighting Teofimo Lopez. He's not fighting Vasyl Lomachenko. We're on year 4. He still ain't fought that dude. He didn't even fight Tevin Farmer. Didn't fight Miguel Burchelt, Masayoshi Ito, Jamel Herring, Andrew Consillo, Alberto. He's fighting absolutely no one. No one. When do you think Cameron versus McGee will happen? I'm hearing rumors that it could happen in fight camp. I heard that because somebody said that Eddie Hearn said in an interview that they're going to bring a unification match to fight camp. Maybe it'll be that one. If fight fans didn't have an issue with Wilder's resume, they would, Mr. Chief. You get it. That if that happened that way and nobody said nothing, and you actually had people trying to like hype the dude up, they're gonna do the same thing with this kid. They don't want him to lose. It's like it ain't about wanting to see a fight for them. It's not. They want an idol. They don't want a real champion or a real fighter or a real this or a real that. They just want an idol. And as long as they keep him away from everybody, he could keep being an idol. I'll never forget when Floyd threatened to yeah, bro, like I ain't forget that. That was like 3 years ago that he was threatening him because they was having problems and Tank was posting shit on Twitter, #free Tank. But Wilder wasn't worried he'd lose in that first fight. The second fight had far closer odds. That's true too. Maybe it was nerves. They're gonna give Tank Broner if Broner's still fucking fighting. If he don't retire, end up going to jail. Is it true that Ellerby said when he stated nobody knows Josh Taylor, or is that his excuse to keep? I mean, you know the answer to that question, bro. You know the answer to that question. Like, once again, that didn't happen that long ago. Taylor versus Ramirez didn't happen that long ago. And over 1 million people on ESPN tuned in to see that fight. That was right here in America. Now, you give me the numbers for Mario Barrios' last fight. How many people were watching him? I could pull it up. I could go to BoxRec. I could see the card it was a part of. I could pull up the TV ratings and then compare those ratings to the ratings of Taylor versus Ramirez. And you know what you're going to see. If Gervonta is a legitimate 3-division yeah, like to me, I know that like yo, his day of reckoning might not come for a long time if it comes at all. It might not, because they know exactly what they're doing. They know like, bro, we can't have him out here fighting these kinds of people. You know what I mean? Like they know like I know, like you know, they know. How come you're one of the only? Mayweather got Davis on a slate. He might. But yeah, man, like everybody's waiting for Davis's day of reckoning. Whereas, as far as I'm concerned, that day may never come. It might not. As careful as they being with him, might not.
My bad, Julius. Fucking Floyd Mayweather hit my car with the EMP and took me out while I was talking.
That was Heyman, bro. He had like a Xavier moment. Like Tone is talking shit about Tank. Stop him.
Stop him.
Motherfucker touched his forehead. Stop him. Stop Tone.
He's lying. Tank Davis is undisputed 140.
Yeah, like I'm not mad at the shit no more because I don't care. It doesn't cost me nothing. You feel me? Like he can have 6 pay-per-views back. I'm not gonna buy none of them shit, so it ain't no sweat off my back. It's the arguing that if you happy with Tank and you don't care about Undisputed and you don't care about, you know, the best fight, you don't care about none of that. Yo, that's your prerogative. I don't give a shit what strangers watch. I don't care. It's when they argue with me, it's like, well, why are you arguing with me? Reggie titles is not real titles. Everybody know that. Everybody know that.
I mean, there's really no argument to be had with you because Floyd Mayweather Jr. said it out of his own damn mouth that he's not fighting any of the other fucking champions, that Tank is only going to fight in-house fighters. End of story. Like, where's the argument?
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like what I noticed, and the reason I kind of keep coming back to this is because if he don't fight Teofimo, I don't give a shit. I came from an era where Riddick Bowe chose not to fight Lennox Lewis. This ain't the first time. Like we've been here, dog. Like I've been here. Like I'm ready. I'm ready. I know this shit. All right. So if Tank don't fight Lopez, I don't give a shit. If Tank don't fight Loma, I'm gonna watch Loma anyway. I'm gonna watch Lopez anyway. I'm gonna watch Haney anyway. I'm not gonna watch you. So I don't like that's easy fix. The issue is that people try to guilt you into supporting him. And I don't like talking about it, but that's what happened. They try to like force you and try to like, oh, if you don't like him, you know, I'm a hater. He got a Reggie belt. Mario Barrios, you want me to be over the moon over Mario Barrios? Why? Cut the shit.
I agree to an extent. Like I said, the only thing that bothers me is I saw a dude who came in with a lot of potential and it's just been wasted. Because I used to big up him a long time ago, and the more he picks his fights, or the more his fights get picked for him, is the less and less I like him as a fighter. And that's my only internal battle, is because I did big up him when he first came onto the scene. And for the past few years, you know, I've talked about how good he is, how I thought he could beat this guy and that guy. But I mean, after the Barrios fight, I'm not even sure that he could beat a Ryan Garcia. I think Ryan Garcia might knock his ass out.
Look. I'm gonna show you something, right? I'm gonna show you something, right? This is a meme that I made. Well, I didn't. This is a meme that I edited because I didn't make it, but I added a lot of special features, right? I made this, right? I edited it and I made it. Now, in the comments here is a guy named Abe Vigoda. Shout out to Abe. Nothing against you. We just have a difference of opinion, right? Here, he says, I think he can beat Taylor. That's what he says. And these guys will do this over and over. This is like their way of justifying him not fighting these people. Oh, I think he could beat him. It doesn't fucking matter if you think he can beat him. They're not fighting. Like, is that supposed to like be like a consolation prize for me? Well, I think he could beat him. Well, I don't give a fuck what you think. I want to see the fight, right? Now, if they're not gonna fight, it's okay. I'm not gonna go cry in the bathtub, but don't expect me to act like he beat him when I know they're not gonna fight. You want me to act like he beat him, like act like he beat Loma, act like he beat Lopez, act like he beat Haney. Why would I do that? I don't have no reason to pledge fealty to nobody that's not putting no money in my pocket. I don't know about a lot of other people. I don't know. I just know, hey, I don't get paid to big him up. So, I mean, the fuck? Fuck I look like? Cheerleading motherfuckers. Like, nah, you bugging.
I mean, I hear what you say. I don't get paid to big up nobody either, but despite that, I was doing it off of what my eyes were showing me. You know what I mean? Like, I could see the speed, I could see the power, I could see the potential. It's like, for instance, I knew, like I said, I'm bringing up Triple D, Daniel Duval, because I knew he was gonna get his ass whooped. I didn't.
Why you gotta do that? Why you gotta talk about? Why you gotta do that though? You don't have to do that.
I look at him in the same fucking boat. Like, I knew Joe Joyce was a step too fucking far because Joe Joyce has actually been fighting, and every time he fights, he tries to fight somebody harder. Whereas everybody that they put against Daniel Duval was tailor-made to make him look good. There were guys there to be laid down. And I see the same thing with Tank Davis. And before I got hit with that EMP, what I was trying to say was, in the Barrios fight, like, Tank Davis did what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to knock him out. He was there to be knocked out. But what he wasn't there to do was look bad in the early fucking rounds, and he looked bad in the early fucking rounds.
He did with Leo Santa Cruz too.
Yeah. Until he caught Leo.
No, yeah, he caught him.
There's another thing too that, like, people don't understand. Barrios does not have that type of punching power, right? Now, Tank's defense looked decent. It did look like it had improved, but midway to the end point of that fight, Tank quit his defense and he was just walking with a high guard straight into him to get the shots off. Like, he could walk through his fucking punches. So I don't know, man. Like, I cannot see him doing, even to like a Regis. I cannot see him walking like that through a Regis.
Listen, man. I already look. And I mean this shit, right? If Prograis versus Davis was next, right? Regis will knock his ass out. I don't have no doubts about that. If Prograis versus Davis was next, Davis loses. If Taylor versus Davis was next, Davis loses. Why? These are guys that have been in wars. They're all battle tested against the best fighters this division has had to offer the last 2 to 3 years. That's what they've been doing. Regis already had all his litmus tests with Velasco, with Indongo, with Kirill Rillick. He already done been there and done that. All right. Regis wrapped up Ivan Redcatch before Danny Garcia, who's a fucking welterweight. Remember, Ivan had to fake the funk to get the fuck out of there because he got hit a couple of times. He didn't want to be there no more. Like, he didn't like I ain't gonna be here 12 rounds with this guy getting hit like this. Fuck that. I'm out.
How you gonna grab your nuts and you get hit on the back of the hip and it barely even glances?
That's what I'm saying. Like, behind
you know what? I bet you that'll be Tank Davis's next opponent, Red Cash. That's who they're gonna put him in there with.
Because he keep talking about him. Like, we can see, like, it's so obvious that, like, oh, so Ivan post fight gonna talk his shit, gonna keep talking. Good job, Fat. But like, I see what y'all doing, man. Y'all want us to get hyped for this shit? This dude that faked the funk on Triller? Come on, B. Come on, B. It's my thing is this. I don't care who likes him. They care that I don't like him. That's what it is. I don't look for people to argue with about, like, I don't care about him. The last, I say, 4 fights, I was not, like, I legit did not watch them shits. The only reason I saw this weekend's fight was because Loma wrapped up Nakatani, so that fight was still on. Somebody shot me the dream stream, and I watched it. But other than that, nah, I'm good. I don't need to pay for that shit. I don't care if I don't care who you fighting, it's a non-issue. I don't care about your fight. They get mad if I say I don't care
I
about.
make some people mad.
Like I'm not saying, I'm not lying.
Well, not just that, but no,
yeah,
but they don't just get mad at that. Like I done had some Tank Davis fans get mad at me because they was like, yeah, the Barrios fight was the best fight over the weekend. I was like, no, the fuck it wasn't. The Loma Nakatani fight was the best fight over the weekend, in my opinion. That fight was way better than the Tank Davis fight.
It was way better.
I see,
yo, look, bro. I see people saying fight of the year. I'm like, fight of the year. If we gonna get into fight of the year, that's either Chocolatito versus Estrada 2 or Navarrete versus Diaz, because Navarrete versus Diaz was ridiculous. That fucking fight was ridiculous. That was nuts. Motherfucking Barrios versus Davis fight of the year. Fuck, you living under a rock?
I don't know. Like, I had both the fights side by side. I was going to pay for the fight, but then after they talked about that Josh Taylor was not a pay-per-view draw and nobody knew his name, I was like, I'm not going to pay for the fucking fight. So I went to a friend's house who was a sucker that paid for the fight.
Among degenerate boxing fans, me and you, we degenerate boxing fans. We could tell you all types of shit about motherfuckers. So when I tell you that I didn't know Mario Barrios, I didn't know him. I didn't know him. I knew Josh. I've been watching Josh for years. I didn't know this Barrios person. Like, who he? Where they found him?
I didn't know who he was either. So I'm gonna name another channel real fast. The first time I heard of him was whenever I was over on H Money's channel listening to him talking. He was big up in Barrios, and I was like, who the fuck is Barrios? Like, he's a champion in what weight class? Then he said 140, and I was like, oh shit, here comes this bullshit. Now I see why Tank's fighting him. Then I looked up his record, watched some of his fights, and I was like, man, this dude trash. This dude's fucking trash. I'm sorry.
Honestly, look, I believe in fairness, right? And I believe that Mario Barrios is not a bad fighter. I honestly don't believe he's bad. I don't believe he's bad. But you not what they're saying you are. 1, you're not a champion. 2, we don't even know if you're world class. Why? You never got to the point to where you was fighting former champions or world title challengers. The guys you fought, they ain't do shit, and you ain't do shit. So Tank beating you ain't about shit.
Julius,
just because
I'm gonna tell you something. Mario Barrios is a 20-something-year-old journeyman. That's what he is, and that's
not fair. That's not fair. Yo, Al Heyman using that EMP again, yo. He using that EMP. He's like, Tone, stop talking about Davis. Al Heyman got his psychic juices going right now, B. Stop it. Don't talk about Barrios. Yo, that EMP is strong, man. This is like the Nun, B. Motherfucking evil spirit. Al Heyman is floating outside your house. Like, stop it. Stop talking about him. We're going to have to call Ed and Lorraine, B. We're going to have to call Ed and Lorraine and exercise this boxing church. Because shit is getting wild out here. But real shit, man. Like I said, if there's people out there that are really enamored with Javante, so be it. Like, so be it. That's their okay. So be it. That's their prerogative. That don't got nothing to do with me. But don't argue with me when I say Reggie Belts is not real. Like, I'm not gonna start qualifying Reggie Belts just because that's all Javante want to fight for. Nah, he not undisputed. He not 3 division. Reggie belts ain't real. You bugging. Anyway, that's all I got to say for now. Gonna try to upload 2 episodes of the relay after this. For those of you that are not aware, the previous live suffered technical difficulties because I went to edit out a part that was in it, and I ended up deleting most of the damn live. So that's why I had to come on for a second time. But everybody just stay up, stay away from Reggie belts.